Hey guys, Argent Templar here. So Stop Being a Pleb published this. Well, posted this, I suppose you'd say. I remember this and this website from years and years ago, back when I was in high school. My atheist friend sent this to me, and I thought it was super biased back then, and I think it's super biased now. Um, I think this whole website is frankly run by reductionist, atheistic leftists, and that will become inherently clear as we go through these tests. But I'm going to see how they deal with someone who is actually fairly versed in philosophy and someone who's not like retarded. So let's see here. Argent Templar versus Battlefield God. So God exists? True. God is a logical possibility. There's nothing contradictory about the very idea of God. That is, of course, true. If God does not exist, then there is no basis for morality. True. I've been over that in the moral argument. You can go and look at that video. It's in my Existence for God list. Any entity that is right to call God must be free to do anything. Um, Actually, Thomas Aquinas went over this. God is not free to do anything. Um, God can't act against his nature. God has a nature just like everybody else. God can't do things that are logically impossible. God cannot create a square circle. God cannot create a rock so big that he cannot lift it, because that's a logical impossibility. So no, God is not free to do everything. Any entity that is right to call God must want there to be as little suffering in the world as possible. This is one of their. This is a word game. This is a logical thing they use, like a club, to try and beat people over the head, like people like me. Um, the issue is their idea of suffering is a very plebeian, um, like, oh, I scraped my knee and so God doesn't exist. These people are not particularly philosophical. Um, God has a grand plan for the universe, and part of that is allowing suffering to occur at this point in time. Eventually, there will be no suffering, but I think I'm going to say false. Um, I think God doesn't particularly do much with regards to just normal suffering. Any entity that is right to call God must have the power to do anything that is not true. As I said earlier, God cannot create a rock so big that he cannot lift it, because God cannot do things that are logically impossible, because logic and acting in a logical fashion is part of God's nature. Evolutionary theory may be false in some matters or of details, but it is essentially true. Now, this is a word game. Um, they're assuming they will assume later evolutionary theory has no evidence for it. Um, which it does. So I don't really get it. There's no ability of these people to see nuance. They don't really understand how science works. In science, you pick the most likely theory that has evidence backing it. And I think God is the most likely theory as to where the universe, morality, and life came from. Evolution, I think, is true because there's the most evidence for it. There's fairly overwhelming evidence that it exists in some form. So I'm gonna say true. Danger, no injuries so far, but watch out, danger ahead. It is justified to base one's belief about the external world, i.e., the world outside one's head, on a firm inner conviction, even in the absence of any independent evidence for the truth of that conviction. I think false, actually. Um, Otherwise, there would be no basis to picking one religion over another. Otherwise, you would have no basis to criticize schizophrenic people. The idea of mental illness could not exist. Psychology could not exist. Social norms could not exist. Um, I know there are some people who will probably criticize me for this, but no, I think if you believe in God, you have to have something beyond just that your feelings. Any entity that is right to call God must know everything there is to know. Yes, because he created everything and he can see everything, so yes. Torturing innocent people is morally wrong. Of course it is. If, despite years of trying, no strong evidence or argument has been presented to show that there is a Loch Ness monster, it is rational to believe that such a monster does not exist. That is true. People who die of horrible, painful diseases need to die in such a way for some higher purpose. I'm going to say false. I don't think most suffering has a higher purpose. I think it's just the fallen and broken nature of the world. Um, I know some people do think all suffering serves a higher purpose. I don't know. I guess it does in a spiritual sense, but overall, I don't think in the way they mean it, it does. I think it's just that the world is flawed and broken and requires healing. If God exists, she can make. Oh, they say she because they're fucking fedoras. Make it so that everything now considered sinful becomes morally acceptable, and everything that's now considered morally good becomes sinful. No, God can't do that. God can't act against his nature. He can't do that because being good is part of God's nature. So false. Doing brilliantly. 5 more questions. It is foolish to believe that God in God without certain irrevocable proof that God exists. Okay, well, this is once again they're playing word games. We don't have irrevocable proof that gravity exists. We don't know what causes gravity. Um, they have this theory of gravitrons, but you can't directly observe gravitrons. You can't directly really observe evolution. I mean, it's a non-physical thing. Evolution is non-physical. It has a physical mechanism through natural selection, but overall it is a theory to describe something that patently exists. Much like gravity, you can measure gravity, um, you can base calculations on gravity. You can shoot a spacecraft across the solar system and hit a planet dead on while using gravitronic calculations, but we don't really know what gravity is. We don't really know what quantum theory is either. We just know that it kind of works. I mean, you can't observe this stuff. I think that's important to keep in mind. You can't directly observe most of these things because sometimes they're smaller than light particles. So yes, I don't know what to say here really. It is foolish to believe in God without certain irrevocable proof that God exists. I think it's foolish without any proof. But I think personally God is the best explanation. Um, I don't know. Basically, this is just a word game. Uh, I'm going to say false. Oh, okay, and that didn't make biting the bullet. As long as there are no compelling arguments or evidence that show God does not exist, atheism is a matter of faith, not rationality. Yes, I think it is. Um, and here they're gonna play a word game, but I think it is on the atheist if you present like the cosmological design argument to show that stuff could occur naturally. And I don't think there is any actual reductionistic, materialistic explanation for where the universe came from. I've never seen one. I've never seen one for why the first cause argument isn't relevant. So yes, I do think it is. I think agnosticism is not a matter of faith, but I do think atheism is. You've taken a direct hit. Earlier, you responded that it was rational to believe that the Loch Ness Monster does not exist if there's absence of strong evidence or argument that it does. And this is how fucking retarded these people are. The Loch Ness Monster is not a logical necessity. The Loch Ness Monster is not a product of empirical observation. I have arguments based on God being a logical necessity in order for morality to exist or the universe to exist. If the Loch Ness Monster exists or not, it's irrelevant. It doesn't affect anything else. Nothing is dependent on it. It's not a contingent or necessary existence. These people don't really seem to know the basics of philosophy. No strong evidence or argument was required to show the monster does not exist. Well, absence of evidence or argument was enough, but now you claim that the atheist needs to be able to provide strong arguments or evidence if their belief, and they just like these are why I call them leftists because they think these things are interchangeable. To them, literally, God and the Loch Ness monster have the same odds of existing. They've obviously never really read any theology or really read much philosophy, moral or analytical or anything. So I don't think this is a contradiction. Um, yeah, so these guys just don't know what they're talking about. The serial killer, whoever, had a firm inner belief that God wanted him to kill prostitutes. He was therefore justified in believing that he was carrying out God's will and murdering his victims. That is false. If God exists, he can create square circles. No, he can't. Um, is justified to believe in God if one has a firm inner conviction that God exists, even if there is no independent evidence that God exists. I personally, I'm sorry, guys, I can't do it. I can't function that way. Not that I don't have a deep faith, but I can't justify that as a general rule because it can be used to justify anything. So, let's see. I'm male. I'm Canadian. My religion is Christian. And I am 20 to 29. So, you navigate the battlefield suffering one hit, which I didn't actually have. They just are stupid. And biting 0 bullets, which represents an overall performance at the 85th percentile. So I did better than 85% of scores, worse than yours. The What the hell? How did I get to that page? Okay. Let's see here. Recap of your direct hit. Like it doesn't show me statistics. I want to know how the different groups did. Well, so I think I got 0% because I think their one is bullshit, and I think I can logically explain why it's bullshit. So, obviously this test wasn't designed. I know what this test was designed to do. It was designed to make Christians look stupid. But I'm actually like sort of trained in this stuff to some degree at least. I did take philosophy at a university level, so yeah, it obviously wasn't made for people like me. I guess it has a use in just telling like pleb tier Christians that they need to like be a bit smarter, but overall it's just a fedora thing, and I'll do the rest of the ones on this website. This is Argent Templar signing out.